Hi, my name is Pablo Zabaleta and I welcome you to this video where we will be covering Chapter 7, Process Strategy and Capacity Planning of the Heizer and Render book. The outline for this video begins with strategic approaches that we can use in operations, then we go on to techniques to improve service productivity. We talk a little bit about process reengineering and how do we face it. We talk also a little bit about equipment and technology selection. Then we go on to capacity and capacity classification. And finally, in our towards the end of this presentation, we will be covering factors affecting the ability to install capacity and factors affecting capacity usage. So let's start directly with the strategic approaches. As we saw previously, there are four general. The process focus, which attends to high variety and low quantity. The product focus, where we work with high volumes of product and low variety. Then we have the repetitive focus, which works essentially with moderate volumes and moderate variety. And then we have the mass customization. Even though in the book they talk a lot about Dell computers, we also saw that here a lot of companies now have been able to replicate this approach. For example, Starbucks, where you can have your coffee any way you want it, and yet they also attend a lot of customers at the same time. That's mass customization. So let's talk a little bit about process design tools. There are two questions here. The first one is, does the process remove steps that do not add value? We always must strive to develop our process, or to make sure that our processes add value to the product or service. If they do not, those steps that do not add value must be taken out. And second, does the process maximize the value offered to the customer from the customer's point of view, not from our own? And this is something that most companies tend to forget. How are we going to do this? The usual tools are flowcharts, maps, process graphs, service process, and as you can see, all these are variations of a flowchart. The trick then is to have the proper documentation. When we talk about service process design, we must always keep in mind that sometimes customers can demand much more from a process than it can give, which makes the service much more expensive. The trick then is to find the exact combination, the right combination of costs and customer interaction. Certain techniques exist to achieve this. Let's talk a little bit, let's cover some of them. First, we're talking about separation. We must structure the service so that customers must go where the service is offered. For example, in a bank, you go somewhere for opening an account, another for service, or another for deposits or withdrawals. We also use the self-service. Customers can then evaluate and compare at their own pace, but this is used in supermarkets and stores essentially, but also, for example, with ATMs, automatic teller machines. So the customer just goes into an area and then he walks at his own pace. Certain companies are taking this one step further by adding, let's say, the cashier-less service. For example, in certain stores, Amazon stores, you just go in, you pick up the stuff, and then you pay with your phone or whatever, but you don't go through a cashier. Then we have postponement. How does postponement work. We customize it at the point of delivery rather than in production. Hamburgers is a good example of this. Focus, we just restrict ourselves to certain areas. For example, instead of having 1,000 items in the menu, we just restrict ourselves to hamburgers, to tacos, to whatever. That allows us to reduce the costs and increase the value for our customers. Then we have modules, for example. You can have a certain amount of stuff, of building blocks, that you just add them and put them in place according to your needs. Insurance can be one of them. There was a try at making cellular phones modular. Computers, sometimes if you're making yourself your own computer, you can build them this way. Then we have automation, where we separate the services that can lend themselves to some automation, just in the case of ATMs, for example, but that's not the only one. There are a lot of instances where you can do, for example, the purchasing part of buying with Amazon, for example, or whatever other merchant is now working in the internet, is essentially automated. You can purchase your tickets to fly, you can purchase a lot of things, and that is without having anybody intervene, without the hand of man intervening. You just have to make sure that the process is as solid and as flawless as possible. Then we can program, for example. In the case of scheduling at an airport, you just schedule the staff to work at a certain time period. That is when the plane will be preparing to leave or when the plane is arriving, whatever. Then we have training. Yes, we can train people so that they can work in different areas of the service, and we can change them from post to post, and this helps us to have a very flexible working force. Then we have, for example, a spatial organization. We accommodate things in such a way that the customer flows according to our needs, so that they have a longer or shorter travel. For example, in supermarkets, we want them to go as long as possible, because the more exposed they are to products, the more prone they are to buying. In other places, we want them to have a shorter route, so that the experience can be faster or can be better for the customers. Also, we can train the human resources, for example in fast foods or in banks or whatever, and technology, for example, where the customer prepares the specifications for what they want, and then the system takes it and creates the service or the product. I remember there was a company in England where you went into the system and you created your furniture, and then the machine took it from your plans, from the CAD systems that were the computer assisted design systems. They just went into a CAM, to a computer aided manufacturing, and they produced the furniture and they sent it over to your house. So it was essentially the customer who was designing the furniture, and the factory was making it without any intervention. Now let's talk a little bit about process reengineering. Our lesson will continue in the next video.